The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports. You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels.
Oh, Lee Smokes. Carolina beat San Diego State 95-68. It was a choose-your-own-score kind of game for the Tar Heels, if we're being honest. Like, San Diego State scored, I think they hit their final 7 field goals as Carolina pulled their starters with 7 to go, as it was a 40-point game. I mean, good grief. The Tar Heels moved to 23-13 on the season. Let me check. Ken Palm hadn't refreshed yet. Let me see if it has now. No, it still has not. So we'll continue to look at that as we go. But my word, you all, like I'm befuddled. This is phenomenal. So this is definitely not a therapy session, although I might need therapy because I've been laughing so hysterically for the last 2 hours. Up next, by the way, Ole Miss coming up on Friday, 4:05 Eastern on TNT. That game will be in Milwaukee, just about a 6 hours drive from Dayton, so not too bad. It'll be a short plane flight for the Tar Heels. If you're new with us on the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, welcome in. We're so glad you're here. If you're watching, welcome in real time. If you're listening back later, yeah, what's up to you guys as well. The comments are already piling in. If you want to leave some questions or observations, we'll get to those later in the show. We'll look at nitty gritty. We'll look big picture and everything in between. It's fun. So I had said on Twitter earlier today that the outcome of this game needed to be held independent of whether Carolina's inclusion in the tournament was warranted or not. Now, you know, I think we probably all believe it was, and that people make a big deal out of the quad one stuff and not making enough deal out of the other metrics. Whatever, fine. I think if Carolina had lost, it would not be grounds to say, see, you shouldn't have had them in. And I don't think by Carolina winning, it's like, oh, clearly they should have been in. It's just like, A, Carolina should have been in. B, they proved you why they should have been in. But I can look at both of those things separately and say that their resume told you they should be in, and tonight's eye test clearly showed you that they should be in. What a dominant performance against the San Diego State defense. That, let me tell you about them as we get into our show. San Diego State came into this game first in the nation in field goal percentage, 14th in the nation in points per game allowed, and having not allowed any opponent to score more than 80 points. Well, field goal percentage defense, 37.8. The Tar Heels just shot 52.6% from the field. Not just beyond the arc, from the field. San Diego State allows just 63.6 points a game. The Tar Heels got their 64th point with 13 minutes and 26 seconds left to go in this game. San Diego State, the most points they had allowed all year was 80. Carolina hit 82 on RJ Davis's 6-3 with 7 minutes and 31 seconds left. Carolina could have named their score, but they called off the Dogs half a minute later, and that was that. Carolina drops in 95. This game only looks respectable, which is funny considering what the final tally was, because they called off the Dogs and let all, it's like, fine, whatever, do what you want to do. Oh my. We come into this game against this defense, and I got to say, I was very concerned because against defenses of San Diego State's ilk and caliber, this season Carolina has often resorted to stagnated defense. Think about how the defense, stagnated offense. Think about how the offenses looked at times in the 3 Duke games, the first game in particular, where it was just like they felt inept. The defense was swarming and long, and Carolina couldn't move the ball and couldn't take care of things. And then this game started, and Carolina turned the ball over 6 times in the first, was it 4.5 or 5.5 minutes? 5-ish minutes of the game. 6 turnovers in that span. It's like, here we go again. Carolina's going to turn the ball over. They're going to be careless. And then they're just going to have to play iso ball one-on-one, and it's not going to go well. But then, all of a sudden, It just flipped. Now, Carolina was already shooting well. Let me be fair. At that point, the Tar Heels were already shooting very well in this game. But one of the markers to me of, are you moving the ball well, is assist numbers and assist percentage in particular. Carolina finishes this game with 17 assists on 30 made field goals, which is an assist percentage of 56.7%. And again, that's with the starters coming out with 7 minutes to go. Like, it could have continued to grow. Carolina did a marvelous job in this game of not letting a ball hawking, we want to mess things up and get our hands in passing lanes defense overwhelm them. Part of that for me was, I said on today's show, one of my four corners preview points was that the Tar Heels needed to attack, and in particular needed to attack Magoon Gwath, their big man, their freshman who blocks 2.5 shots a game, that was coming back from injury. He started this game. And one of the things I was looking for was Carolina to go at him and at the rest of this defense and say, screw it, we're going to move the ball well, we're going to move ourselves well, and we're going to get to the rim and we're going to knock down our shots. And that's exactly what Carolina did. Gwath, I was curious to see how effective he would be, both because of his knee injury he had suffered, or if Carolina could get him in foul trouble. Well, he picks up his second foul with more than half of the first half remaining. He did come back in the first half, but Carolina rendered him not able to do it. And look, he still got 9 points, 5 rebounds, but that's not much. He did block 2 shots, altered a few others, but nothing otherworldly that I was worried about. Phenomenal stuff from Carolina on offense. We're not even getting to the defense yet, but oh baby, we will. Just believe you me. There were a couple possessions in particular where I thought Carolina moved it well, one in each half. In the first half, there was a play. Who rebounded the basketball? I want to say it was Vin Allen Lubin that got the rebound, if I'm remembering correctly. Pitched ahead to Elliott, who threw a nice pass ahead to RJ for the finish. Nice layup, got out ahead of everybody. And then the one in the second half, I thought this was even more impressive, and for a couple different reasons. Carolina's up 64-36 at this point. So what is that? 28 points, 12 minutes to go. And at that point, you could just say, yeah, let's just take it easy, pull off the gas. Man, I loved that the Tar Heels were in go mode. Like, step on the throat, step on the gas, do not let up. That's the killer mentality that I love to see. Seth gets a rebound, pitches ahead to Ian Jackson, who had a nice bounce pass to the left to Elliott as they're running the break. Elliott throws it back up to Ian, who just couldn't quite finish the alley, got hung on the rim. But what was beautiful, so that alone, that attack was beautiful. But what I love, who got the rebound on the other end of the court? Seth Trimble. When Ian got stonewalled on the rim, who was there to clean it up and get the putback? Seth Trimble. Did not sit there and watch that play develop. Took his butt off down the floor and finished. That is leadership. That is Seth Trimble doing what he needs to do, man. I absolutely love that. I often talk about who's going to dictate the terms of engagement, and it was Carolina in this game. It was like everything I heard about coming into this game. Oh, Isaac, you're underestimating San Diego State. They're big and tough and physical, and Carolina can't match that. Bull crap. You just saw what this team did, man. They were all over San Diego State. Carolina dictated this thing. They were the aggressors in this game, and I don't want to hear anything otherwise. This was no wine and cheese Tar Heels. We know that they have this in them. They've got the dog in them, and they showed it in this game. And man, Seth Trimble continues to be that guy to me. That Carolina has needed leadership all season long. We've talked about it, not having a Cormac Ryan, not having a I'll just use Cormac as the example of that. Like, but Seth, I've said multiple times. Harrison Ingram is who I was trying to think of. I've said multiple times, I think Seth can step into that role. And man, his tough-nosed everythingness on both ends of the floor is a clear indicator of that, and I love it. Now, to this point, we've been talking about Carolina's offense. But you heard Seth Trimble say it at halftime as he was interviewing with John Rothstein, which I think is hilarious that Rothstein had to be out there. So good, man. Seth said, though, it was our defense that dictated what everything hinged on there in the first half. So that's what I want to get to next. Plus, Man, what a great opportunity at redemption for these guys.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. You've got to have those 5-12 upsets all ready. Those 4-13 upsets, maybe even a 3-14 in there just to get a little spice. Are we having fun yet? And with FanDuel, they make it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. The tournament games happen almost every day, so there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. Looking at the first four, there's a matchup of perennial tournament teams in the first four. The Xavier Musketeers face the Texas Longhorns. Winner will get Illinois next. FanDuel likes the Muskies by 3.5 in this one. Do people say that? Do they call them that? So they do now. Visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alabama State clinched their spot in with a really clutch victory over St. Francis that we're about to break down, and I'm sure that they will break it down as well. So we had our first four matchup, not the first four games, but the first four means the first four teams out. And in Alabama State's case, this was a battle for a true 16 seed. Now, they won this game. They've earned the honor to play Auburn, the number one seed on their bracket. And this is the definition of March Madness. What Alabama State just pulled off is the literal definition of March Madness. It's what we are all sitting here waiting for. There's two things that we want during the NCAA tournament. One is absolutely dramatic finishes. We don't really care when we get them, but we want that. And number two is upsets. Now, while this didn't check the second box, it did fully check that first box. This was a thrilling game. On tomorrow's episode, you'll hear a two-part interview between HBCU Nightly and myself. I'll tell you the God's honest, it was supposed to be one segment, but we ended up talking about these games, the Black College Invitational Championship, and it ended up going for two segments. So we probably won't be breaking down Southern women's basketball. I don't think we will. We'll probably find something else for that first lead topic, but that's okay. Anyway, you'll hear that interview on tomorrow's episode. During our interview, or before our interview, really, I'm telling them, look, I don't think that Alabama State is going to pull this off, because at that moment, it felt like every time Alabama State would get close, St. Francis would pull away just a little bit. It wasn't a lot, but it would be, oh, it's a 1-point game. And I look back up and it's a 5-point game, because that's just what it felt like the ebbs and flow of the game were leading to a St. Francis close victory. So we end up finishing the interview and it's 2.5 left. I look over, I said, oh, Alabama State up 2 points, 2.5 left. We rush off the call. Boom, we gone. Now we're going to watch this game. And this is why people love March Madness. It is, because it's a drop whatever you're doing and pay attention type of event. Doesn't matter if it's 216 seeds battling it out. When you're watching that game on whatever network that it was broadcast on, whatever Turner network that it was broadcast on, it feels like a big time game, right? Like, these are two schools who conference wise, they probably don't get a lot of love, but St. Francis versus Alabama State felt like a big time game, especially when you get down to the end. The end of this game was the definition of March Madness in the sense that there were 3 seconds left. It just felt like Alabama State was about to go into OT. I did not have confidence ever until the game was over, or really until that shot was made with 1 second left. But Alabama State, they couldn't close out on a certain possession. Then they follow it up with a rush possession by St. Francis that Alabama State forced. St. Francis dribbles the ball out of bounds underneath their basket. So now Alabama State, the Hornets, have to go the length of the basketball court with 3 seconds. I'm thinking that they're going to do a play where you take one side of the court, take a player on one side of the court, you run through and kind of make a loop, and you try to get some steam before you get the ball so you can get as close to full speed as possible. No, they chunked the ball all the way down the court, probably to about the free throw line. The ball gets bobbled. It was not a clean catch by anybody. You had a couple of Alabama State players who were fighting for it. One gets it, puts it up, boom, 1 second left, you're up by 2. It was an absolute dramatic finish that would get any basketball, not even fan, any basketball casual excited, because it's one of those situations where it's not likely. If you play basketball or watch basketball at all, being full court, 3 seconds left, it's doable. It's not improbable. It's doable. But throwing a Hail Mary to the other side of the court, it just typically doesn't happen that way. It just typically doesn't work out in your favor, but it did for the Hornets. That was an incredible finish. It was a finish that made me actually wish that I stayed on the phone with him, but I don't think that he was next to a TV because he asked me the score of the game. So I don't think that he was next to a TV, but it's one of those ones where you want to be sitting next to somebody at a sports bar and watching. That's what it was. You want to be sitting next to your friend watching this game at a sports bar, and everybody goes crazy because no one sees this coming, but everybody's watching. Especially in the first four, it's the only game on. Everybody is watching, and the crowd goes wild, as the cliche says. This was an incredible finish. This was a monumental finish. This is going to get you an extra paycheck. It's a paycheck that goes on for a couple of years, a winning check, a participation check, and I think you will get another participation check. I think that is the case. But who cares about the finances right now? Who cares about the finances right now? I want to read a couple of stats that I think really tell a story. Now, obviously, Alabama State's going to chunk them threes up. They're 9-29 from beyond the arc. You know how that goes. They're not going to get a lot of free throws, and I think that's probably related to the amount of threes that they shoot, because you're not getting in there and getting a lot of contact. They shot 1 of 4 from free throws, so it wasn't great, and they didn't have a lot of attempts. But this was something that I did notice. Offensive rebounds. So Alabama State had 12 offensive rebounds compared to St. Francis's 3. That tells you second chance points, and they don't have second chance points on here. There's a couple of stats that I wish were here for the game that aren't, excuse me, but those 12 offensive rebounds means that you're getting multiple shots at the basket. You're getting multiple shots at getting points on the board, and I would like to know how many times they delivered, but that's a maximum of 36 points if you shot threes on every single one and made them. But I don't feel like that was the case early on against Jackson State. And to have so many more defensive rebounds, to allow so many little offensive rebounds from St. Francis, I think that it showcased that you were frequently getting second chance points and not allowing many, because you only get three rebounds. So that means you're playing good defense, getting good rebounds, and you're moving on to your next possession, not giving multiple shots at the basket. Lastly, and the one that probably stands out more than anything else to me, is that it flashed up that Alabama State only has 9 turnovers per game, which is fifth fewest. I can't talk today apparently, but it's 5th fewest in the NCAA. In this game, they only had 6, and they forced 15. I think that Alabama State probably doesn't get enough credit because 3-pointers are the headliner. They play really good defense. They have really good hands on defense, and they do a great job of forcing fast break points. The other stat that I wish was here in addition to second chance points is points off of turnover. I would love to know what the points off turnover were, because this was as I'm watching the game, this was my favorite. I'm not gonna say the best, but this was my favorite source of offense from the Hornets. Is sometimes it was shoot the gap on a pass. Sometimes it was just we're gonna reach through and we're gonna poke it away. But Alabama State's hands on defense are incredible. Matter of fact, let's look up where they are in the SWAC right now when it comes to steals, because just watching it off the last couple of games, I struggle to believe that they are not high in steals. Let's see, miscellaneous, assist, steals. Well, Alabama A&M's only 5th, surprisingly, in 5th in steals per game. That's actually really surprising to me, because they have really good defensive intensity with the pressure, with the hands, with the technique. They're always reaching, and I don't think that they get a lot of fouls, but they're always reaching for the ball.
The Indiana Hoosiers make a polarizing hire with Darren DeVries from West Virginia to be the next head basketball coach.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Darren DeVries, the new head man, the head coach of Indiana men's basketball. And there's already controversy because some fans are happy, some fans are upset. Players are leaving, possibly players coming in, more on the portal in just a little bit. Plus, where do we go from here? All of that here on today's episode. And with any coaching search and with any coaching hire, you're going to have controversy. You're going to have some fans that are ecstatic. You're going to have fans that are excited. You're going to have fans that feel this was the best hire for their team. You're going to have some fans who are kind of in between, right? Let's see, maybe our opinions are still up in the air. Let's see how it goes. Let's see how he performs in the portal and in recruiting and then on the floor, and then we'll make our decisions. Then you've got a group of fans, which seem to be the loudest group of fans, who are just appalled by this decision. They can't believe it. They're upset. They're furious. They're threatening to quit being IU fans. There's a lot of them right now with Darren DeVries being the next head coach of Indiana basketball. And so for a new head coach, you're stepping in major controversy already. And the fan base is just up in arms. Again, you've got pockets of them everywhere saying how they feel. And I want to know how you feel down in the YouTube comments. But I still feel that this is, for the fans who think this is a good hire, I think you're right. I think this was a different hire. I think it is somebody who, yes, was being talked about. I'll admit I didn't think was in the top spot when the decision was made. I thought Ben McCollum was still up there. I thought Brownell was there. And then DeVries was kind of in that third spot. But after a conversation between DeVries and Indiana, he obviously made a jump. He made an impression. Scott Dolson has some quotes out there about what they were looking for, right, in an Indiana coach. And he checked all the boxes. He said the right things. They offered him the job, and he took the job. So he obviously made the jump and ultimately was announced and has a press conference today on this Wednesday about being introduced as the new Indiana men's head basketball coach. But for those of you who are worried about it, I'm curious on to why. And I could see it, right? He's coached 1 year at a major college program at West Virginia. He had Drake in the tournament 3 out of 4 years. And he had West Virginia, who should have been in the NCAA tournament. Their best player, his son, Tucker DeVries, was injured through the first 2 weeks of the season and didn't play the rest of the way. The guy averages like 20 points a game, more on him in just a little bit. And they still almost made the NCAA tournament and got shafted. Everybody believes that. It's so fascinating to me that it was West Virginia and Indiana, the first two teams out of the tournament, the two teams that most people were making an argument for to get into the tournament. And then all of a sudden the Hoosiers said, hey, we'd like to talk to your guy. And he did. And now he's gone. And so I just think the guy's a winner. I think he is a up and comer. There are people on, I guess, in the recruiting side of things that I'm hearing that they really believe in DeVries, that he can be a, quote, sleeping giant in recruiting. And let's be real, Indiana has struggled mightily with recruiting over the past several years, even just getting guys in state. Now, you've seen and heard some of the things and more portal news coming up in a little bit, but Trent Sisley retweeted the graphic from Indiana basketball and said, let's work. Let's get to work. He's excited. So Trent Sisley seems that he's going to be coming to IU. So you hopefully avoid some of that controversy, right? And he's made it known he was still committed to Indiana and not necessarily committed to Mike Woodson per se, which you could take that however you'd like. But it's good to know that your best recruit in the upcoming class is still going to be stepping on campus. Now, Haranzerno is a whole nother thing, and talk about some controversy because there's no news that he is decommitted or at this time is not coming to IU, but just about every team in the country has reached out to him and said, hey, do you really want to go to Indiana? Do you really want to go play for a new coach that you know nothing about? You just let us know. And whether the Hoosiers can hang on to him or not, I don't know. We're going to have to find out. There's also some controversy on the money involved here with Darren DeVries, the new head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers, whose buyout was paid by Indiana to West Virginia of $6.1 million. He's also signed a deal with Indiana, 6 years, $5 million a year. Yes, $5 million a year and a 6-year contract to be the next head coach of Indiana men's basketball. And he's also going to have $7 million at his disposal for NIL and revenue sharing to literally go buy a team. Okay. It wasn't that much for Mike Woodson on this past year's team. I believe the number's right around $5 million that they paid for this team. And you saw the results. And again, we're going to get to some eligibility things here in just a little bit, but there are people fired up about that. The fact that he's here for 6 year or on a 6-year contract at $5 million a year and going to have $7 million at his hands to go and buy himself a team. I don't think any Indiana fans are upset about that, but we've been trying to tell them, and I've been trying to tell you, that Indiana's NIL situation is insanely stupid. It is so good that any coach would be foaming at the mouth to come and get an opportunity at this. But, some people say that's cowardly. We'll have more on that on tomorrow's episode. And you have this money just literally put on your desk and say, go have fun, go buy us a winning team. And that's exactly what DeVries is going to have to do. And I expect him to do that in recruiting. I expect him to do that in the transfer portal. But are fans happy or are they worried? Some seem to be impressed. I think more people are getting on that train the more they read into this guy a little bit, and I would recommend you do that as well. We have some breakdown on the channel before. We'll continue to break it down as we go, but I think this is a solid hire. It's not the big name. It's not the home run. It's not Chris Beard. I get that. I do. I totally understand. But I think you should be happy with who this guy is and what he is and what he could do here in Bloomington. I've said it. He's an up-and-comer. He's a guy that won at Drake. He was winning at West Virginia, and he is going to win at Indiana. How much? I don't know. How long? Couldn't tell you. But I think it is a sneaky good hire is the way that I'll put it. But those types of hires bring up controversy sometimes. And that seems to be where the Indiana fan base is right now. And even outside the fan base, it got people riled up that Darren DeVries from West Virginia is the new head coach of Indiana men's basketball.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets. When your first $5 bet wins, that's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. You've got to have those 5-12 upsets all ready. Those 4-13 upsets, maybe even a 3-14 in there just to get a little spice. Are we having fun yet? And with FanDuel, they make it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. The tournament games happen almost every day, so there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. Looking at the first four, there's a matchup of perennial tournament teams in the first four. The Xavier Musketeers face the Texas Longhorns. Winner will get Illinois next. FanDuel likes the Muskies by 3.5 in this one. Do people say that? Do they call them that? So they do now. Visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long.
The Cavs lost to the Clippers on Tuesday night, and there might be some things that are starting to get a little concerning with the offense.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
The Cleveland Cavaliers lost their second game in a row on Tuesday night. They lost to the LA Clippers 132 to 119. This was a game that I thought looked pretty encouraging at the start, and then the offense disappeared again. So the Cavs opened up with a 45-point first quarter. I thought the offense looked great. I thought the ball movement was fantastic. The shot making really on both sides was terrific. The Clippers scored 37 points in that quarter, and their shot making was able to keep up in a way that the Cavs was not throughout the night. But I was very, very encouraged with what we saw from the Cavs in the first quarter offensively. I thought that was exactly what we needed to see coming off of a game against Orlando where, again, they had a good first quarter, not as good as the first quarter against the Clippers was, and then didn't finish strong throughout the rest of the game. And this was kind of similar to that in some ways, because I thought early on the ball movement looked great. Thought Donovan Mitchell looked great. DeAndre Hunter had a great first quarter. Thought Darius Garland did some really good things in the first quarter too. Max Strus obviously hit a couple of threes. He was really good early. So you watch what they did, and it's like, okay, is this going to keep up? And the Clippers are the number 3 defense in the NBA. So it was a really good test for the Cavs. Seeing them be able to do that against one of the league's better defenses, I thought that was a really good sign for what was to come. And then basically, I don't know if it was to the same extent as to what happened against Orlando on Sunday, but the offense really struggled after that in the same way. And I think that there are some things that are worth looking at for the Cavs offensively with what things have been like this month. And I don't think that by any stretch of the imagination, the Cavs losing 2 straight games is time to press the panic button. Like, no, that is not what should be done. I think that these losses are okay. Do you want to lose games? No, of course. The team never wants to lose games, but these losses are also not the end of the world. And I think that needs to just be said at the start of this, because there are some things that I think, I don't know if concerning is the right word, but they're worth keeping an eye on with the offensive end of the floor. Defensively against the Clippers, I thought it was okay. I know Kenny Atkinson talked in his post-game presser that I watched on TV that, he was disappointed with the way the Cavs defended. I thought they defended all right. Like, I didn't think it was a bad defensive performance. Certainly on the interior, it was. And we'll talk about what Ivica Zubac did against Jarrett Allen and against Evan Mobley coming up in a little bit. But as far as the shot making goes, like, the Clippers were red hot from 3 basically all night long. Like, they had a stretch where they made 9 consecutive 3-point attempts. They finished shooting 45% from 3. They're not a great 3-point shooting team. They're not a super high volume 3-point shooting team, but they had a really, really good night. And I thought a lot of the threes that they took and made, like Kawhi Leonard had one in the second, or maybe it was in the first half, but just some really, really difficult shots that they made. And I sort of think that with the Clippers scoring 132 points, yes, that is something that you look at and say the Cavs need to be better defensively, and they do need to be better defensively. This was not a championship level defensive performance by any stretch of the imagination, but I also look at it as, what? I think the Clippers probably deserve more credit for how they played offensively than the Cavs deserve to be critiqued for how they played defensively. It's never all one thing. Like, it's not, the Clippers played a perfect offensive game and there was nothing the Cavs could do about it. That's not true, but I don't know that the Cavs played quite as bad defensively as the numbers look. Like, if you just look at the box score, it's like, wow, they were pretty abysmal on that end of the floor. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more of the Clippers were awesome offensively, and sometimes in the NBA, that's going to happen. Like, the Magic shot the ball really well from beyond the arc on Sunday. Sometimes that's going to happen with a team and an offense as bad as Orlando's. It's a rare thing, but it will happen at times. The Clippers have Kawhi Leonard. They have James Harden. Like, they have guys that are capable of that. Kawhi, I thought, was awesome in this game. I thought he was the best player on the floor. Finished with 33 and 7 while shooting 63%, made 5 of the 6 threes that he took. Like, he was awesome. He was absolutely fantastic. It was, I think, a throwback Kawhi game. Sometimes that happens. That's the best way I can put it. Like, that's one of the things that went wrong was that. But I do think that if you want to look into what the Cavs are doing offensively right now, it's worth talking about, because in the month of March, the Cavs have not been a great offense. I don't have the numbers from after this game. They might actually go up a little bit just because of how good that first quarter was. But going into Tuesday night against the Clippers, in the month of March, the Cavs were the number 16 offense in basketball. Now, of course, they are still the number one offense in basketball for the full season, but they've not been the dominant elite offensive unit during this month. And of course, it's a small sample size. Like, it had only been 8 games prior to Tuesday night. So it's a little bit of a small sample size, but they've not been great. They have been scoring like 115 points per 100 possession, which is a very significant drop off from the 122 points per 100 possession that their full season number basically is that. And that is the thing to me that has really stuck out, not just about the Cavs falling off after a great first quarter in each of the last 2 games, not just against the Clippers, but against the Magic too. But it's like, okay, how come they haven't been able to sustain what they've done offensively? And against Orlando, it was very poor 3-point shooting. The Cavs were obviously better from beyond the arc against the Clippers, where they made 14 of 41. Like, that's not a great night, but it's not a bad night from deep either. And the thing that I just keep coming back to is the guard play that the Cavs are getting right now. So Donovan Mitchell scored 10 points in the first quarter. I thought he got off to a really great start in this game against the Clippers. He finished with 18 points on 5 of 18 shooting. Like, in the month of March, and I know that he had a couple of big games at the start of the month, but in the month of March, Donovan has not been great. Before Tuesday night, shooting 35.4% from the floor and 20.5% from 3 in the month of March. Now, it's a small sample size. Like, that is a 5-game sample size, and these numbers are not going to get better with what he did shooting 27% from the floor and 22% will go up marginally for his 3-point rate, but that's just kind of who he's been over the last few games. That's not necessarily what the Cavs need. And the Cavs are good enough and the Cavs are talented enough to where if Donovan Mitchell has this sort of slump, which I think it's fair to say that he's in a shooting slump, I think it's fair that if he has that sort of stretch, they have enough depth, they have enough talent, the offense works well enough that they can still be elite, even without him at his best. Can they be, at their peak without him at his peak? No, of course not. But they can still be the best offense in basketball. And I think they've shown that at times this year. But for that to happen, Darius Garland needs to be really good too. And Darius Garland, I thought, was okay against the Clippers. The month of March has not been kind to him. So against the Clippers, he was 6 of 14. He had 17 points. He and Jarrett Allen were actually the 2 Cavs that finished with a positive plus-minus number. And it really, I don't know that it necessarily felt like it, because I didn't think Jarrett Allen was all that good in this game either. Like, I do starting to have a little bit of questions about that hand injury that he's dealing with, because I do think he's kind of struggling to hang on to the basketball in traffic more so than usual. That's really and there's like not a stat for that, but if you're watching these games, it's like, you know what, that doesn't necessarily look the same as it normally does. And to me, a guy that I know is very clearly playing through a hand injury, like, that is the thing that I'm going to point at and say, okay, that's probably has something to do with it. I think that's a fair assumption to make, but I didn't think Jarrett was great. But, Darius was better. The Cavs won those minutes by 8 points. Now, the Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley minutes were an absolute disaster for the Cavs tonight. Like, they got throttled. When Mobley was on the floor in the 31 minutes he played, the Cavs were outscored by 27 points. That never happens. Like, that was, to me, one of the most jarring parts about this box score. And if you watch the game, like, it felt like it. Mobley's box score stats are okay. Like, he had 17 points, 7 of 12 shooting, only had 3 rebounds, only had 1 assist. Like, if you just look at the box score, it's like, he was fine. But I think watching the game probably told a much different story. And I do want to talk about that coming up in a bit. But just to close on that point, the Cavs offense can be elite if Donovan Mitchell is not at his peak. The Cavs offense can be elite if Darius Garland is not at his peak. But I don't think that they can both be what they've been in the month of March and the Cavs sustain a really, really great offense. Like, they can still be a league average offense, which after this game, they are 12th in offense in the month of March in the NBA. That is an average NBA offense. That's who they've been with 2 of their 2 of the 3 offensive engines, I think, playing pretty poorly. Now, if one of those guys gets back, and I do think that we're seeing some good things with Darius Garland, I would expect the offense to bounce back and start being a little bit more consistent, but it just has not been the best thing to watch lately.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. You've got to have those 5-12 upsets all ready. Those 4-13 upsets, maybe even a 3-14 in there just to get a little spice. Are we having fun yet? And with FanDuel, they make it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. The tournament games happen almost every day, so there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. Looking at the first four, there's a matchup of perennial tournament teams in the first four. The Xavier Musketeers face the Texas Longhorns. Winner will get Illinois next. FanDuel likes the Muskies by 3.5 in this one. Do people say that? Do they call them that? So they do now. Visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long.
The Warriors were going to give it a fight after they were exposed a little bit against the Nuggets, and they did just that. And this was one that on paper, you thought the Bucks had the advantage. Warriors were given points. Rightfully so, missing Steph Curry in the game, but they're now 7-3 without Curry on the floor. This one had some layers to it, just like yesterday's game. I guess you could start with the fact that the Warriors came out hot. They were shooting the three ball exceptional. Everyone seemed to be playing well. There was a point in the first half where I think 4 guys for the Dubs had 8 points. So you were stretching the floor. You were playing unselfish basketball. And the Warriors were up by as much as 17. Then halftime hit. They went to the locker rooms. They talked it out during recess. They get back out there. And the Monstars stole their talent for the entire third quarter, just about the entire third quarter. Warriors turned it over 10 times. They were down by 6 with 90 seconds to go in the quarter. And that is where the momentum clearly shifted, starting with a huge Buddy Hield 3 off a turnover, a little stop and pop from deep. Buddy was huge. We'll get into that. And then moments later, Jimmy Butler fouled on a three-pointer, definitely baited it. It's about over-under about a 14.5-minute challenge there. Took a little bit, but eventually they said that Butler did get hit on the elbow, hits all 3 free throws, and I don't know if the Warriors ever trailed again. Butler sparks it in the fourth, and Podziemski closes it out with great defense from Peyton and from Draymond. I think we covered just about everything in that elevator pitch right there. Kolsky, welcome to you. What a win, man.
Huge win. It did get ugly. But, if you take out about the first, what was it? I don't know, 9 minutes of the third quarter, this thing was great. Like, if you can just wipe that from your memory, great night all around. You mentioned it. Pretty much everybody played well, the exception of Jonathan Kuminga, who just didn't have it tonight. I mean, they're better without Steph Curry, right? That's the takeaway.
No.
I don't know. No? Okay. All right. Well, if it's not that, I think clearly
It was a focus issue. They didn't have the focus. They were sleepwalking against Denver, and they knew that tonight this was a bounce-back game where they had to show that without their leader, they could go out there and compete in a basketball game. And that's what they did, man. They competed. They fought their tails off. They played unselfish. And it helps when you hit some shots because they were, 25% from 3 in the last game. They were 38 today.
Yeah, but they weren't great shooting the ball overall. What they did tonight is, as you said, compete. They played great defense all night long. Everybody out there was defending the heck out of the ball. And
give the people the numbers on Giannis and on Lillard, the 2 guys that can kill you for the Bucks, what their final numbers tallied up.
Yeah, I mean, combined 11 for 34. That's the kind of thing you're looking for. And Draymond, again, is just a terror out there. Like, I guess, again, it's like talking about Steph's offense, right? I mean, maybe he was better when he won Defensive Player of the Year, but it's hard to tell what the difference is. He is absolutely on 11 on the defensive end, and you can tell. And Jimmy Butler did everything tonight, I still don't think we've seen the real Jimmy Butler game, but I think on a night like tonight, his approach is really good because he knows with Steph Curry not there, he's got to get some other guys going to get enough scoring to win this thing. And, what was it? 24, 10, and 8?
Not a bad day at the office.
I don't know what more you want from him. And he goes down with 5 turnovers, but like some of those were passes that were perfectly decent and got fumbled on the receiving end. So Jimmy, 11 for 11 from the free throw line. You can see the way that affects the team. You shouldn't necessarily win with 104 points in today's NBA, but when you play defense like this and you play together and you rise up to the key moments, this is a team that can get it done. I'm still waiting for everything to really click.
Yeah, I'll pose the question later on. I'll pose it right now, and we can answer it later on. The Warriors have a top 3 defense in the NBA with Jimmy Butler and now with Pods back too, because I think Pods has slept on a little bit as a defender. He's good team defender out there. But let's talk about Curry for a minute, because Kerr said that Steph's turnovers in the loss against Denver, 7 of them, a lot of them were just attributed to him being mentally exhausted. Didn't say physically, but physically his back's been hurting, and it's literally from carrying the whole team, right? Like, he has been exceptional the past month. So Curry needed a night. He gets his night. The Warriors needed a win. And this is once again another game, a big game that they've won without him. I mean, they fought hard with Oklahoma City earlier in the year without Steph. Didn't win it, but fought to the final possession. So they've played well in some pretty difficult games without Curry on the floor. And like we mentioned, it was legit everyone. You go up and down the box score, it's 24 for Butler. It's 14 for Quentin Post, who knocks down 4 3-pointers. He had taken 8 by like the 6-minute mark of the second quarter. It's like, geez, Quentin, how many are you going to fire up? But he knocks him down, man. And Butler has a nice connection. We say this with Butler and many players on the Warriors, but he has a nice like skip pass to, exactly what I'm talking about, to Post, where he sees the tree, over in the left wing or whatever, and skips it over to him. And Quentin seems to knock it down quite a bit. Moody had 7, Pajimski 17, 10 for Kuminga, and then 15 for Buddy Hield. Gary Payton had 8, and Payton played exceptional defense. So we'll continue this conversation. We'll talk about the Warriors defense as a whole. Brandon Pajimski returning to the mix. What all does he bring? But I want to ask right out of the shoot here. I guess it's not really the shoot, considering we're 8.5 minutes in, getting ready for a break. But who gets your game ball? Is it Jimmy? Is it stock answer Jimmy? Do you give it to Brandon with the way he had stones down the stretch, couple massive dagger threes.
Yeah, it's Pods for me.
You're giving it to Pods? Okay.
Yeah, he's in his hometown.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to have a perfect game for a minute. I think he ended up missing 1 or 2. He ended up missing, 4. It seemed like he was hitting everything he was throwing up. He didn't touch the rim on those first 3 or 4 shots. And like you said, they needed a couple big shots down the stretch to push him across the finish line.
And Payton had one too. Payton had a huge one.
This looked like a team on the back half of a back-to-back, just trying to get this thing across the finish line before the wheels come off, And look, sometimes you got to win that way. That's it. That's the end of that sentence. It's something that the Warriors, I think, have, again, before Jimmy Butler, struggled terribly to do. You have the dramatic pauses sometimes, man.
I get it. I don't know.
It's
that's
on
how
me.
We'll have to go moving forward. Just end of sentence. Okay, I move on. Yeah. So that 8-0 run in the final 90 seconds of the third, the Buddy Hield bucket and the Butler baiting the foul on the 3, and then Warriors just going ham in the fourth. It was Buddy. It was Butler. That was the difference in your game.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets. When your first $5 bet wins, that's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. You've got to have those 5-12 upsets all ready. those 413 upsets, maybe even a 314 in there just to get a little spice. Are we having fun yet? And with FanDuel, they make it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. The tournament games happen almost every day, so there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. Looking at the first four, there's a matchup of perennial tournament teams in the first four. The Xavier Musketeers face the Texas Longhorns. Winner will get Illinois next. FanDuel likes the Muskies by 3.5 in this one. Do people say that? Do they call them that? So they do now. Visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast.
I compared it to, I said it was fast guy insulation for the draft, so you don't have to feel like you have to go into the draft. Oh, we have to get a fast guy. We have to get a fast guy. But it's insulation in the way that newspaper on the Lambeau concrete when you're at a game in January is insulation. Like, it helps. You don't lose all your heat through your boots into the concrete, but it's a marginal difference. This is a help for your return game because you're not putting extra miles on Jaden Reed. You're not putting extra miles on Keyshawn Nixon, who is now a no-doubt starting cornerback for you. Keyshawn Nixon even said, I kind of don't even want to do it because the rules, and he was pouting a little bit, right? But he's right in that the new rules are not friendly to returners. Now, Mecole Hardman has been known to make some boneheaded decisions on punt returns, but he is dynamic when he has the ball in his hand because he can absolutely fly. So if all this does is give the Packers Tyler Ervin 2.0, and I'm not even talking about 2020 Tyler Ervin, I'm talking about like 2019 Tyler Ervin. Fine. That's a positive signing for the Packers. They're better with Mecole Hardman. Because Jaden Reed, by the way, I love Jaden Reed, has not proven to be a dynamic returner in the NFL. Just hasn't. I like the idea of Jaden Reed punt returner, but this is not, putting Odell Beckham back there in specialty situations. Like, it's just not. Mecole Hardman has much more juice and just much more dynamic ability back there. There's also the offensive piece of this, and I wrote about this today in The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. One of the reasons why Jaden Reed, and there was an account that mostly does fantasy football that tweeted like, Jaden Reed only getting the number of targets that he got last year is a war crime. Hyperbole, of course. One of the reasons why, though, is there were too many times last year where you're in 11 personnel, 3 receivers on the field. You send Jaden Reed in jet motion, orbit motion. You're creating uncertainty in the defense. You're making them, scramble and make sure you're getting aligned and getting everybody set. And if you're in man coverage, you got to make sure you're running with those guys. But then they're not really in the route all the time. Now, they've done a better job of using the cheat motion and, jet into jet wheel. And it's not just like when the Packers were doing it in 2020 with Tyler Ervin, it was a lot of jet motion into check down. Like, that's what Tyler Ervin was, which was fine because Tyler Ervin was not really a receiver, not really a route runner, just a guy that was out there. But what Hardman would allow you to do is you could actually have that orbit motion guy or that jet motion guy, and he's a threat because Hardman is a threat, and he's a vertical threat. And you could have Jaden Reed on the field. I've talked a lot about wanting to play Jaden Reed more on the boundary. Just see if in 12 personnel, you can have him out there. Just see. And it doesn't, you don't even always have to be getting off press. You put him in at the Z spot, which sounds, is that a bar in a show? Feels like it. That would allow you to have them both on the field at the same time. And Hardman can run some routes off that. All of a sudden, you have him running those jet wheels, and defense has got to go, oh, crap. It is some insulation, so you don't have to feel like, okay, if let's say Jaden Higgins is the best option, like the defensive guys fly off the board, there is that, that non-zero chance. Harbin's gone, Azaraku's gone, Grant's gone, Barron's gone, Will Johnson's gone. And you're like, man, maybe just take Jaden Higgins, which, by the way, I'm on board with. But you're not getting, yes, he's a 4-4-7 guy. Yes, he's a vertical threat. But he doesn't scare defenses the way that Christian Watson does. And certainly wouldn't early on. But Hardman gives you some of that. So some of that insurance that on day 3, you could take a Dante Thornton, for example, from Tennessee. And even though he's not ready to be a full-time receiver for you, you could give him some snaps if you wanted. Now, I think there's reasonable questions to ask. Like, is that better than just having Bo Melton do that thing? I would say probably, frankly. And I like Bo Melton a lot, but I think we saw last year there were times when there was a little bit too much Bo Melton and a little too much Malik Heath on the field. This team needs to lean into its best players. It can't be that Malik Heath is getting more reps in 12 personnel than Jaden Reed. You have to get your best players on the field. And I think Hardman gives them an opportunity. And you're going to think I'm overselling this, and I get it. But it's going to give you an opportunity to use Jaden Reed more as a receiver while maintaining the gimmicks, the little gadget stuff that you want to do as Matt LaFleur, which help this offense, which make this offense go in a lot of ways. You can do that and make sure that your best receiver is still getting an opportunity to be a receiver, to win routes, to win vertically where he's awesome. That is the plus side of someone like Hardman. And again, it is some level of insulation that if you can't get a Jalen Royals, who I just think is such a great fit, if you wanted to get crazy aggressive, Jalen Noel, who's, not the right body type, a little short arms, probably a slot at the next level. But if you think Jaden Reed can play outside, maybe Jalen Noel makes sense. I doubt it, but maybe. These other guys, these big body guys, you still need the speed. And that's the thing that the Packers have to make sure that they don't go in the draft going, we have to get a speed receiver. You have someone here that can give you some of that. Remember, the Chiefs had to basically bring him back because they didn't have that. They wanted to do other stuff with Xavier Worthy, and they needed both. So this is an interesting move. It's maybe not that impactful of a move, but it's interesting. It's pretty similar to like the Sammy Watkins move in that was never really going to be, he was never going to be, in all likelihood, a real part of the offense. But every once in a while, you make some plays and you go, oh, that's nice. Now, Sammy Watkins was once upon a time a real receiver when the Packers signed him, but there's a defined role here for Hardman coming in. Returner, gadget, speed insurance. For basically no money, this is fine.